All right, it's pour day. We've gone through our checklist a couple of times. We need to make some phone calls this morning. We're squaring up all the people, the trucks, the pump, and everything. We've got some help coming to stab rebar into the footing. And then we've got a few last minute things to do to the forms. We need to add some cleats and things. Oh yeah, and we've got to make room for the truck. That means we've got to pull 3 cars and 2 trailers out of here. We actually talked to our concrete guy last night and he let us know quite a few tips and tricks about dealing with the pump guys. Not that they're like devious or anything, but there's certain things that they're gonna do. Like they have a lubricant in their lines that they need to get rid of before they pour. It's pretty nasty stuff apparently. I don't know what it is. It's some sort of like an oil or something. So we're ready for that. We got to find a place we want them to put that stuff. We don't want it anywhere near the house because apparently it just is nasty and it never dries and ugh. The engineer plans call for vertical rebar to be placed in the wall, which is pretty standard. Apparently, it's a fairly new thing that the American Concrete Institute, I believe, allows the rebar to be put into the footing like this. And it's actually okay that this touch the dirt. In the past, if this touched the dirt, you would fail an inspection because corrosion would start on the bottom of the rebar. And it was believed that over time, that corrosion would work its way through the rebar up into your wall and would fail the rebar completely, substantially weakening the wall. So this rebar had to be suspended off the dirt. But apparently, it's fairly new information that they've concluded that there's not enough oxygen below the footing to substantially exaggerate corrosion. We're going to be pouring the footing and rodding, which means screeding the top of these forms so that the float only has to smooth the surface of the concrete out. Then we're going to come back and stab or wiggle these vertical rebars into the mud. Why wouldn't we put the vertical rebars in first and then pour concrete around it? Sounds a lot easier, right? The problem is when you're rodding, every one of these orange marks is a rebar. So you'd have a rebar here, 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 here. It's virtually impossible. It would take forever to get the excess mud off the top of the forms if you had rebar in here every 14 inches. So it's actually faster to leave the rebar out, move the mud, float the surface, and then before the concrete gets too hard, you can wiggle these rebars down into the footing. There's one small problem with our step downs here. We've got marked for 3 rebars. To meet the specifications on our plan, the rebar has to stick up from the top of the footing into the wall, which will go here, 36 rebar widths into the wall, which I think is around 18 inches. But these are the vertical rebar that we've cut, which will be fine for these footings. But on the step down, as you wiggle this into the step down, guess what? It disappears. So I need to cut some longer vertical rebars for these 3, and I think there's 3 on the other side also. I'm super happy to report that with a little bit of rest, a little bit of food, and a little bit of cuddling, Alyssa is back in action. She's looking pretty chipper this morning. I think she knows how big of a day this is for us, and I can't say enough about how hard Alyssa has worked over the last 3 days. The way we relate to it is that we call it like an ultra marathon because it's been 102, 103 degrees, and we've been putting in 16-hour days. I cannot blame anybody for being absolutely bushed after that. And that little trooper, Alyssa, has just been holding out and pushing as hard as she can. And that's why we are ready to pour today. Without her help, it wouldn't have happened. One of the things that we learned from working with this contractor on some of his concrete pours was you need to do everything you can so that during the pour, you don't have to do anything besides focus on pouring the concrete. The more you can do before the mud gets here, the better. Relieving yourself of a lot of critical thought, especially when you're going to pour in 100-degree heat. We're trying to pour early in the day, which in this case is only going to be 11. It'd be nice if we were pouring right now, but it's okay. We're going to lay little bits of rebar all the way around so that our friend Jason, who's going to help us, will not have to run around and figure out where the rebar is. Make sure your floats are in the right place. Make sure your work site is clean, your tools are put away, you know where your shovels are, you know where your screws are, you know where your nails are, your drill is in case you have a blowout or, you know, there's issues with the form work. A successful pour, from what we've learned, really just comes down to a tremendous amount of planning and preparation. And with that, the pour can go pretty smooth. But if there's a lot of chaos, things are misplaced, job site's kind of dirty and you're tripping over everything and everybody's yelling at each other, man, concrete gets to be an absolute headache. So we just got a small piece of drain pipe installed underneath the footer here on the southwest corner. The reason we did that, our concrete guy suggested, it's very hard to see probably because of the lighting, but about halfway up the northeast corner is clay, and then above that is gravelly sand, and then above that's kind of like a loamy soil, and then topsoil. That clay represents the water barrier, and so all the water has been moving through that gravelly kind of sandy area back there, and if you drew a line, it would point you to right here. So roughly that's the direction of water flow. We're going to be putting drain tile or drain pipe around the perimeter of the footing on the outside, but if water were ever to get underneath the slab, it would have no way really to escape other than down. So to make that a little bit easier, we put a small drain underneath the footing here in the southwest corner following that line. And I think I'm going to do a little bit of research, but I think we'll probably put perf pipe around the inside, or drain tile around the inside of the footing, and then put a little bit of drain rock and use filter fabric to try to focus that water and have it come down through this drain, and we'll exit this drain out there somewhere in the driveway. During the pour, concrete exerts a lot of pressure on the forms, but we need to do some cross bracing here, which I believe is called cleating. And what that does is it provides a brace from form to form so that when the concrete's poured, it doesn't blow your forms out. So we need to install the cleats. I've got a bunch of wood from the sawmill. And then there's one other thing we need to do. There's a change in the electrical code. I'm not a code person. You have to ground your electrical systems. Very, very important. I did not understand that a lot of homes now are not grounded using grounding rods necessarily. There's a scientist whose last name I think was Ufer, who worked for the military, who determined that a piece of rebar connected to the footing of a building was a very satisfactory ground. And so they named it a Ufer ground. And this is pretty common in residential construction anyway now, to tie a piece of rebar to your existing rebar in here and bring it out to the edge of the footing and then up. And what that'll do is our wall will be over here, and this will actually be inside the house. We're going to take a piece of rebar and bend it here, and come up into the mechanical room. And then we'll be able to tie our electronic system into the ground. And since there will be continuity in all the rebar and the concrete has direct ground contact, we'll have successfully created a very solid ground. We need to install 2 of those because in order to pass code, we would need 2 of them so that they can check what's called continuity, which means they check point A and point B and make sure that a current passes between those 2 points. So we have to get that done before the pour today. Are you cooling off underneath the trailer? Oh, yeah. Do you want to cuddle? Yeah.
So I put 2 U-for grounds in. It's just a square rebar bent up to come inside the wall there, and tied it into our other horizontal rebar. Looks pretty good, looks stable. I think that'll stay there during the pour. That's one of the biggest problems with any vertical rebar during the pour is stability.
Next, we have a few spots under our forms that are a little bit deep. So if it's like, you know, ½ an inch, we're not too worried about it, but this is a good 3-4 inches, and we don't want all the cement to come splooging out of there. So we're gonna go ahead and backfill this a little bit with rock and even a little bit of dirt. Jesse wants me to share that we're actually using a 3/4 mix in our concrete, which is less flowy than what we're gonna be using in our ICF walls, which I believe is pea gravel, right? Yeah, 3/8 pea gravel, which is great because you really want it to flow in your walls. That said, we can be a little more generous with the gaps under our footings because the 3/4 concrete mix isn't gonna flow as much.
The pump guys are here. They're a little bit early, so now we've got to get things out of the way. Run, run, run.
Dang it, I just ran out. I was hoping to get away with only using 1 gallon, but...
Mud in.
Yeah.
We're gonna rod it off with these. You can help Alyssa float. I'll try to keep up with these guys at the pump so they don't overfill it or underfill the form, because then it takes forever to try to get the right amount of mud in there.
Right.
If you come inside here, there's orange marks. You're gonna wiggle it vertically like this, and it's gonna just slowly work like a hole into that mud. No reaming. Just wiggle it vertically. These need to go, you can either put the orange side in or this side in, and that's the depth. So it needs to be sticking up that depth. Just kind of have to get a feel for the mud.
So wherever we start, just start floating from there, and then every once in a while bail on her, come back to that first part and start to see.
Put one in there and just check. That sounds like our truck. False alarm, false alarm. Once you start stabbing rebar, you're probably gonna be, that's all you're gonna do, because that concrete's gonna start going off, and you gotta keep ahead of wherever it's getting if it gets too far ahead of us. It is our concrete truck. No more teasing. It's actually here.
Floater. I don't like that word.
There's too much.
Okay.
right here. It's just a squeak high right there. That looks good too. Yep. Hi, truck number 1. Bye.
Concrete truck. I know, right? I'm kind of thinking we should all stamp our hand in it. That looks so good. Are they trying to lean on you?
Just these last two did, that's why.
Our cow patty field over here. I think the goal was to build forms for leftover concrete, and I think time snuck up on us. Do you want me to float the cow patties?
A big concrete elephant came and pooped by our house. What kind of concrete elephant poops by your house? It's grizzly scat, I love it.
Grizzly scat.
Grizzly pooped all over. I would have for another US, but third.
Bye, pump guys. I'm pretty sure, based on how things went today, we would have been fine alone. But easily we could have not been okay.
That's the whole, once you
the
get
stress
behind,
starts,
yep,
and then it starts
that's when you
getting
make
too hard.
mistakes.
I'm shocked with how smooth that went. Like, I feel like no one was stressed. Didn't have any problems with the pump. Didn't have any problems with the concrete.
Ethan and the pump, like I was telling Jason, that pump was worth every penny.
Yep.
Well,
we got their expertise too.
Well, yeah, they have so much knowledge that we don't have, so they know how to do stuff we don't even know how to do. But when he pumped that the south wall, I floated that such a small amount, and I rodded it like a tiny bit, and then we floated it. He pumped it practically perfect across the footing.
Yep.
Right? But if you use the chute, remember the sidewalk we did? It's
Oh, yeah.
like blop,
Oh, yeah.
blop, 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 blop. And then you
Yeah.
have like limited time. So, I mean, we didn't keep the trucks for very long.
Yep.
And they knew what pace to go, and they actually helped us rod off the piers. So,
Yep.
I mean, that was worth every penny.
I agree.
Glad you didn't wake up sick this morning. That's kind of selfish. Man, I think the best reaction to have this is it was anticlimactic. So I'm kind of panicking because I feel like we forgot something. So I'm gonna look at my plans one more time and just kind of double check all of our work and make sure that we didn't forget something. I think the ICF guy is actually trying to contact Alyssa. It sounds like those are about to show up, which is pretty chaotic. Those weren't supposed to be here till tomorrow. We literally just finished pouring. Let me take a look around here and see if everything
is the way it should be.
Slow, slow. Good. Tilt back. Good. Tilt back a little bit. Good. Slow. Yeah. Come this way. Good. Straight.